Welcome back to the Peter H channel, and if you've watched any of my previous videos about the Yamaha DTR, you'd know that it does run. It just doesn't run very well. It's a poor starter, and it has some problems at higher revs, and maybe I've done enough to the carburetor now to know that the carburetor isn't the problem. So I've taken off the head now and inspecting it again, and obviously it's been running rich. That in itself shouldn't be a problem. Now what we have is previous evidence of sort of broken piston ring, more than likely. And what I'm going to do is smooth all this out. I'm going to polish this, because this could be the reason why it's a poor starter and a poor high-end performance. It could be that this pitting is causing too much of a problem from the squish to the detonation chamber. The detonation chamber is nice and smooth, but on its way there it's so rough. I'm going to smooth all this out, polish it and smooth it as best I can, but I don't want to lose too much compression, so I'm prepared to just rub this over a piece of glass if I have to try and increase the compression. But I don't see that I'm going to take a lot of material out, although some of these pits are quite deep. Yes, that's better. Some of the pitting is quite deep, and there's obviously some broken piston ring, but the actual detonation chamber is nice and smooth. But I think the squish band is so heavily pitted that it's causing the problem. Or at least it's not going to hurt it to actually polish this up. And while I'm here as well, I'll be able to test the thermostat that I've taken out this time. I didn't test it last time, and I mean, they say if they break they normally jam open. This one's closed, but I notice it says 65 on the back, so I'm thinking it's 65 degrees the temperature. So that'll be a bit of fun to test that out. But first let's get on with this polishing. So what I've been doing now is using 400 wet and dry, just by hand. Basically staying in this ring, sitting down and doing it a bit harder than that obviously, but just giving you the idea of motion, and it's exposing the extent of the pitting. And like I say, the detonation chamber is actually okay, but this is where the piston has crushed bits of broken ring against it, and I'm pretty sure this is the cause of my problem. It's uneven squish, and it's just affecting it. So I'm going to carry on with the wet and dry 400 until I get rid of most of these pits, and then I'm going to polish it up with a finer type, probably P800 or something. So carrying on with a 400 P400, starting to identify the worst of the pits, and really just going to try and smooth those out. If I have to take out quite a lot of metal, then there it is, I'll have to do that. And if it doesn't work, well, I'm not really bothered really, because like I say, this head is Y4 and my barrel is a Y2, so it's not an ideal match, and it's pitted. What can I say? So this is how it looks after about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes of rubbing. I'm just following the shape of the head round there with the 400 grit. Still quite a lot of pitting. I mean, this is quite a bad bit. It's quite a dink. And it's just the general state of it. Like I say, it does run, but I think I'm just going to carry on and see how much of this how much of these I can get rid of. I don't really want to use a sort of Dremel tool on this, because I don't really want to change the shape of the squish ring. That's not really what I'm after doing. I just want it to run a bit better. Don't necessarily want to mess about, because it would be easy if I'd changed the shape, because I haven't taken the piston out, so I can't really match the piston to this shape. But I mean, it might involve actually taking a bit of this squish ring down a bit. Hope I don't ruin it. Moved up to 800 paper now. Hope you can hear that. Moved up to 800 paper, and so now there are fewer dinks. The ones that are there still, they are quite deep dinks, but there's fewer of them, so hopefully I'll get a luster, and then notice a better performance. Hopefully won't have to get a new head, because that's still a risk as to whether this is, even though it's the wrong model head, it might not be the reason it's not working properly. So all I've done was just, haven't tried to re-engineer the squish ring. I've just followed its form and just tried to get rid of the pitting, the high spots, and sort of make it more uniform. Still a bit of work to do. This has taken about an hour. It's quite hard work, sort of wearing out your thumb with a bit of sandpaper, wet and dry. So I moved up to the highest paper that I had, which was 1200, and before I think to myself, this is as good as I can get it really, considering what it was, I'm just going to use some metal polish to try and get it to a mirror. Then I think, you know, there's still plenty of places where the fuel air mixture can get sort of lost on its way to the detonation chamber. Here for example, but there's a lot less places that it can get lost, and yeah, hopefully that'll be a bit better. So I finished off after the 1200 grit with a bit of auto sole metal polish, and hopefully it hasn't left a tarnish layer on it. I don't think it will. Anyway, it'll burn off quite quickly. I don't think it really needs to be this clean, because otherwise I'll be having to clean it every sort of 500 miles or so. It'd be ridiculous. It will come out black again. It was just this pitting that I wanted to address, and I've addressed it the best I can really, because to take it out any further is going to require, I think, re-engineering this head. So we'll have to see now. I've got my height gauge and surface plate stroke chopping board out for this DTR125 head, which has evidence of a previous I don't know, piston ring failure, and I've tried to polish that out, and now, you know, it's time to do something about this this cruddy hermatite old gasket scum layer. And because I took out some material from here, I think it only fair that I try and reduce the height of this, reduce the level of this. So anyway, what I want to do is just make sure the thing is flat. So I'm going to sit it on this surface, which I've already measured actually, and it deviates by about 1/1000th of an inch, and the tolerance allowed on this head is 5. It's not a very good start, is it? But this was off a running bike. I think it could do with a bit of a skim, you know, this head. It could explain why I don't get a good starting off it. Well, the thing is, it's rocking. Now my plan was to measure it and skim it down the poor man's style with a piece of sandpaper and glass. So I've got 400 grit wet and dry on a sheet of glass, which I know is flat, and I've just wetted the wet and dry, started in a circular motion, and already the high spots show up first. And I can't really do this, hold the camera and show the motion, because it's all one-handed, but this is some of that red hematite coming off. And I'm going to continue with that, and I'll progressively change grades, and probably spend half an hour on this at the most. We'll see how it goes. There's, even after a few minutes of the 400 grit, there's still marks like this that I want to get rid of, and this here, because it was rocking pretty bad on the plate earlier. I don't want this. I want to get rid of this. So it's a lot better than it was already, and it will polish up quite nicely. I'm just trying to keep you updated. After the 800 grit paper, this is really starting to look a lot crisper. There is a lip, and there you can see it. It sort of looks 10 or 15, well, let's just say in metric. You know, it's a Nats Tadger, but there's still something to play with. I mean, I really could continue skimming it down till that lip disappears, but I don't want to do that. And I've finished the 800 grit sort of flash, and I'm going to give it a flash with a 1200 grit, which is the last of the fine wet and dry that I've got, and then I'm going to put it back on the surface plate and measure it. To be honest, I don't think I skimmed much off it at all. Be interesting to see what it does measure at. It measured at 32 and 80 microns, 32,008 millimeters, which was 1,263 thousandths, which is 1 inch, 0.263. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to getting that back and measuring it, but I'm going to give it another flash with some 1200 grit. Can't film it. So here's the head after the final sort of wet and dry skim on a sheet of glass, and I've got rid of the scum layer, and now I'm going to measure it to just see how much I actually took off. Not because I'm trying to remachine the head or anything, not trying to re-engineer the head, I'm just curious. I mean, I was thinking about that because there's quite a lip there to play with, but I'm not. I'm just curious to see what it measures at now. Right, so on the surface plate, chopping board surface plate, we can see now that the head does not want to, it doesn't rock. So that's the first thing. There's no rock in there. That's, it was rocking and now it isn't rocking, so I've definitely flattened it. So measuring it in the same place, can I have a look and see? Maybe it's typically on the broken 11 one. I don't know whether that's actually a stain on the thing, whether that's got white paint on. Oh, I see. Yes, this could be slightly confusing. Okay, the vernier 1/1000 inch scale on the left needs to match up with the larger figure on the right. Now, actually reading the figure on the right isn't important at the moment, because we know the figure on the right is 1 inch and it goes 2.5, which is 250 thousandths. So then switching to the left vernier, which is a 50 thou scale, that means anything to you. But anyway, where it says 8 on the right, it's actually 11 on the left, although it doesn't say 11, but it is 11 because anyway, those two match up. So you've got 11 thousandths on the left, and you add that to the right, and that makes 1 inch 261 thousandths. So on the other side of the scale here, we've got in centimeters. So anyway, so I've zeroed in. It's 32 millimeters, well, 3 centimeters on the left. So we switch over to the right hand scale, see what matches up, and each one of these is worth 2. It's not 2, but it could still be 4 or 6. Reading on the right hand scale, it could be 2, 4 or 6. Whoops. Reading on the right hand scale, 2, 4 or 6. It's lower than the 8, so it is between 2, 4 and 6. And take the middle one, which will be 4. It's not quite as accurate as the imperial scale on this, although it is set up as an imperial thing. You can see the measurements are ½ inch. Anyway, so that's what I'm reading it as. So it's come down a couple of thousandths of an inch, which is neither here nor there really.